Hi there, and welcome to Ancestral Recall. I'm your host, Eli Kaplan. This is a web series that looks at 20 years of the history of Magic the Gathering, set by set, giving you breakdowns on the settings, mechanics, and cool cards of every release. This week on Ancestral Recall, we're going to start looking at the plane of Mirrodin. Mirrodin, released in 2003, is Magic's first block in the modern era. It's the first expert-level expansion that uses the new card frames, and this set has so much innovation. This week, we'll be spending time exploring the world, the setting, and the set's mechanics. The next show, we'll look at the artifacts in more depth, and then the last show will be on the color cards and give the final review. Mirrodin is a plane with metal as well as organic components. The trees are metallic, as is some of the grass, and this grass will cut you to shreds if you're careless. The world is mostly metal and was formed by Karn as he explored the planes using his spark. Like planeswalkers Urza and Sarah, Karn created the plane on his own. But his vision was marred, unfortunately, as he was unaware that a drop of Phyrexian oil had fused with him. Karn returned to the Blind Eternities as soon as he set up Mirrodin, but left the plane under the watchful eye of a golem he designed himself, Memnarch. And while the boss was away, the corrupted Memnarch flipped his chrome lid and started doing some nasty stuff, seeking to elevate itself to the level of Planeswalker. Little did Memnarch know that it was emulating the path of Yawgmoth. One of the key elements of Mirrodin's features at the time is its 4 suns, gigantic mana constructs that float around the plane and regulate it. There's black, white, red, and blue suns. And when one of the suns is ascendant, the residents aligned to it feel more powerful, with easier access to more powerful spells. The races themselves are mostly transplants from other planes. Mirrodin introduces the Leonin, lion-like catfolk that prowl the metallic plains. Humans and Vedalken are the primary blue denizens. Goblins and beasts prowl the mountains, very similar to the preceding block, Onslaught. Green has both elves, who feel somewhat out of place in a world that defies nature, and trolls, the oldest, wisest denizens of the plane. And black features the Nim, corpses reanimated by the ichor of the swamps, which are forever denied light due to a metallic visor overgrowing their eyes. Only their ears, claws, and jaws allow the Nim to interact with the world. The Nim gains significant boost to their power by its controller controlling artifacts, providing an affinity of a less obvious kind than the keyword affinity for artifacts. But Mirrodin also features a prominent race of constructs, the Mir, which are slight in stature and stats, but feature a prominent beak, and they're entirely metal. Who do the Mir serve? At this time, nobody knows. The life forms of Mirrodin have been transformed by their environments. Metal covers some of their forms. The Volshok, barbarians of the hills, grow tines of steel or lead. Whether it's the chest area, the forearms, the legs, or the spine, polish and oil are as just common tools for grooming as soap or clothing to protect yourself from the environment. This was never clearly explained, or at least I don't remember it in the books. Some of the major physical features of Mirrodin are prominently featured on the artifact lands. The Leonin culture is centered around an ancient den. The trolls spend time telling stories and protecting the Tree of Tales. Kuldotha, the Great Furnace, is tended continuously by gregarious goblins. Its fire is everlasting. Both Vedalken and human scholars delve into tombs at the seat of the Synod, and Geth and his Nim thralls conspire within the Vault of Whispers. By the way, corpses that are left within the Mephidros, Mirrodin's Great Swamp, reanimate after having metal plates grow over their eyes. That's what the Nim are. Now, who do we know in Magic that involves reanimation, metal plates, and biohorror? Good question. The story of the novel follows Glissa Sunseeker, an elvish adventurer who wants more than to stay at home within the forest. She meets Slowbad, a goblin tinkerer, and Bosch, a quiet golem that has a passionate rage for something he doesn't remember in his normally quiet heart. These 3 scour the plane, trying to figure out why green mana doesn't work like any of the others. The answer lies in the fact that the green mana nexus of Mirrodin is hidden deep within the planet, which turns it out to be hollow. This was the big reveal at the end of the book. Glissa antagonizes Geth, the necromancer who manipulates the Nim, and stumbles upon the curious mystery of the mirror. Now, the story continues in the later novels, and we'll get to that part of the story with Darksteel and Fifth Dawn. Both Glissa and Bosch get cards in this set, so let's take a look at them right now. Glissa is an utter and complete house, repeatedly destroying artifacts. The way she uses mana in your pool as a threshold, not as a cost per se, to destroy artifacts, was unique for many, many years. One of the most popular mono-green EDH generals, Omnath, is a riff off of Glissa's mechanic. And in Mirrodin Block Limited, Glissa was a house. I mean, she destroyed artifacts with no loss of mana once per turn. Oh man, I mean, she was just brutal. Bosch is incredibly big, incredibly expensive, and actually feels like a character in the book that is constantly slaying guys. Bosch's ability to fling artifacts is also incredibly powerful, but Bosch is also slow and incredibly costly, so I think that overall it's fairly costed. Bosch was a key player in 2 top 8 Tinker decks in 2003's Pro Tour New Orleans. Let's talk about mechanics. Mirrodin is the artifact set. Antiquities was the first artifact set, but Mirrodin has 142, more artifacts than Antiquities had cards. And if we omit the basic lands, then the full half of the set is artifacts. And let's be honest, that's a big deal. Mirrodin introduces several new mechanics, including one that's evergreen, meaning that it gets used in almost every Magic set. And here it is. This is the big one. Equipment is the first new major subtype in Magic. Equipment are tools, weapons, and armor that a creature can wield. Many modifies the creature's power or toughness, or gave it an ability such as flying, trample, unblockability, or shroud. Others had amazingly brutal effects, such as removing all other permanents from play when its wielder damages an opponent. Since then, the innovation that we've had such an impact at the same level was with Lorwyn with Planeswalkers. So what's so radically different about equipment? Has it transformed limited? Has it transformed constructed? In this case, absolutely. Equipment was an attempt to overcome the inherent card advantage of auras. If an equipped creature died, the equipment stuck around on the table, waiting for another bear to pick it up and run with it. If you terror a Serra Angel with Holy Strength, that's 2 cards destroyed by 1. Equipment allowed players to develop their boards in new ways, choosing whether to equip creatures or to spend mana on spells instead. This tension was an engaging one. Wizards used equipment as a way to make artifacts matter with Mirrodin, and there is a metric crap ton of equipment in this set. I find that Mirrodin's creatures do tend to be simpler and more vanilla than other blocks creatures, because the spice of Mirrodin's combat comes from equipment and removing it. Now let's talk about Entwine, the first major variant on Invasion's kicker. Entwine gives you a choice of 2 desirable effects, and if you can pay the additional cost, you get both effects. Let's be clear, Entwine is just a narrower form of kicker, and that's fine. This is less open-ended than kicker was, but has cleaner templating, so I believe that it's a strong innovation. A clean example of Entwine is Darksteel's Barbed Lightning, a 3-mana lightning bolt that could hit a player as well as a creature if you pony up 2 more mana. This was a fine limited card that even got a bit of constructed play. Imprint exiles a card from somewhere. That place might be play, a hand, or a graveyard. And imprint cards do things based on what card it exiled. Wizards has been very careful with this mechanic, claiming that memory issues kept this from being a major set component. And despite callbacks in both Scars of Mirrodin and New Phyrexia, they've kept imprint down to 25 cards ever printed. But imprint cards really do matter. The last major mechanic was affinity for artifacts. Fifth Dawn introduced affinity for basic land types, but affinity for artifacts is one we're going to talk about today. Forget, let's just call it affinity. Affinity was one of the most broken mechanics of all time. And I'm not saying that to channel Kanye West. I'm saying that because I really do believe it. The mechanic is very straightforward, allowing players to play spells with affinity for artifacts and pay 1 colorless mana less for each artifact they control. Most of the really good affinity for artifact staples were in Mirrodin. Later sets have fewer affinity spells. The most famous affinity card is Frogmite, one of the most dangerous 2/2s printed. Why is a 2/2 so dangerous, you ask? Because it could often hit play on turn 2, and then it could chain into Mirror Enforcer, a 4/4, for free. That's some serious tempo. The Mirror Enforcer had more impact, sure, but it wasn't played as frequently as the Frogmite. Then, after the Froggy hit play, the affinity player would often draw 2 cards for a single blue mana, thanks to Thoughtcast, another affinity card. From there, you usually see a 3/2 flyer, Somber Hoverguard. I know! A 3/2 flyer that you only pay 1 blue mana for? That's just amazing and unheard of, isn't it? Okay, when we look at affinity, the raw power and toughness isn't that amazing, but the speed is almost unparalleled. Still, it took a bit more synergy to create the infamous beast that lay waste to Standard and numerous other formats, and we'll get to those cards with Darkseal. So please wait. What other awesome cards did Affinity run? Well, Ornithopter was an actual card. It often ended up picking up equipment. Welding Jar, a 0-mana artifact that let you save your best artifact, also got played. Black decks would also run Disciple of the Vaults, one of the key components of the fix. Besides Sombrero Hoverguard and Thoughtcast, Blue also offered Broodstar, a potentially giant flying fatty. Now, before Darksteel came out, yeah, I played an Affinity deck. It wasn't great. My particular favorite finisher for the deck besides Broodstar was in red, Megatog. While Mirrodin did include Atog, which was an Antiquities classic and an early fan favorite, also an obvious anagram, Mirrodin wanted to go one step further. Odyssey had Psychotog and a Togatog. How do you trump that? Megatog. Megatog could turn artifacts into giant growths and had Trample to boot. I myself won a feature match at Grand Prix Shizuoka in 2002 with this guy attacking on turn 5. Ouch! Mark Rosewater has said that Affinity might come back as a mechanic in the future, though it's unlikely that we'll see it again on artifacts. The closest we got to it recently was with Marshmist Titan, which essentially had Affinity for black mana pips. It was okay in draft, but definitely not good enough for primetime. So, that's the mechanics and the setting. Next week, we'll be back to look at the stars of the set, the artifacts. Thanks for watching. This is Eli Kaplan for Ancestral Recall, signing off. Good games and good luck.